I'm Betty Buckley, and you're listening to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
Welcome back to You Might Know Her From with Anne and Damien.
It's me, Anne.
It's me, Damien. And Anne, I've really been thinking about one of the joys of this project is it's like connecting the dots. And I was reminded that we used to do back in the day, we would blind item who was going to be the next guest, and we would like give connective, like this person was in this with this do you remember that?
Oh my God.
I
yeah,
totally
that was very
forgot.
early season 1. That's right. That was fun. It was like a 6 degrees of our actresses.
Totally. And so
we couldn't use men.
Is that right?
Yeah, we couldn't use men, so it had to be connected through a woman.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah.
So, okay, well, what I was so pleased about when in preparation for this week's episode with the great Betty Buckley, which we were going to get to in just a minute, but I was prepping and I was like, oh, Eternity, which was a film that former guest of this show, Olga Merediz, was in, but it was unavailable to find. I couldn't find it in time for the interview with Olga. I don't know that if it
hadn't come out for streaming yet, but it was out of theaters.
I think that's right. And so anyway, it was available on Apple and Betty Buckley is in it. So I watched it and we didn't get a chance to chat about it with Betty, but I was so into the movie because aside from Betty, who's great, she plays the future Elizabeth Olsen, but there's a great scene with former guest of this show, Olga Merediz, playing a lesbian opposite former guest of this show, Davine Joy Randolph. And they're like in like the afterlife talking to Miles Teller about like it's like, oh, you're a lesbian. And it was like, yeah, I was trying to be into him. And I was like, oh my God, this is why I love this project, because like we've chatted with both of those women and they're both in this scene and Olga's playing a lesbian. And I'm like, oh my God, if only we knew she was a lesbian.
Right. We would have gone deep with Olga on that. She was so great.
We used to ask people who are your top 5 lesbians. Like, what a question. Like if someone asked me that, I'd be like,
I just want to reflect back. We just, we did our live show back in February and it was so funny when we went back and listened to Anne Harada's interview from season 1. And she joined us on the live show and she reminded us via text something that Damien and I had shared. We're like, oh my God, I can't believe we asked Anne Harada this question. That is like basically Robert Lopez, who created Avenue Q, EGOTed.
Double EGOTed.
Which of these EGOTs, Anne Harada, would you fuck? And it's like Marvin Hamlish, Rita Moreno.
Whoopi Goldberg.
It's before like who EGOTed? Jennifer Hudson.
And John Legend. It was before. Or you wouldn't let her include John Legend because you said it was too obvious.
Yeah. And she said Jonathan Tunick. And she texted us apropos of nothing. It was like, remember when you asked me which EGOT I would fuck? And then here's a picture of me and Jonathan Tunick. I said, you were right. He has kind eyes. This is what this podcast brings. When people like Anne Harada know what the assignment is, it's just like, yeah, she played ball with us.
Yes,
she really
absolutely.
did.
Love Anne Harada and love this week's interview guest, Betty Buckley, who... Folks, if you're in the New York area or in the tri-state area, there's different places called different things the tri-state area. But
really?
Yeah.
Okay, so wait, I'm going to say sight unseen what I think the tri-state area is because I'm not from this region, right? So I think it's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut. Is that wrong? Is the tri-state New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania?
So there is the tri-state area that includes New York, Connecticut, and I think New Jersey is right. And that is like what New Yorkers in Connecticut call the tri-state area. But then there's also Philadelphia, Delaware, New Jersey, which is like, if you watch the local news in Philly, where I grew up, they will call that the tri-state area because it's like Delco. It's like Delaware County, but it's like the neighboring parts of Pennsylvania and New Jersey that like it's like we all meet at a certain spot, I think. Anyway. All of that to say, if you're in the tri-state area, either of them, or in New York City proper, then Betty is in residence at Joe's Pub. She does an annual concert there where she comes, and she's there April 24th through the 26th. So we get into all of that. And then also we get as much as we can in about her career. What a thrill this one was.
You might know her from Carrie,
Split,
The Happening,
Frantic,
Oz,
8 is Enough,
Tender Mercies,
Wyatt Earp,
Eternity,
and theatrical productions of Cats,
Sunset Boulevard,
Gypsy,
The Mystery of Edwin Drood,
and 1776. Huge day for us here at You Might Know Her From because we are here with legendary star of stage and screen, Betty Buckley. Betty, thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you, Damien. Hi, Anne. It's good to see you guys. Thank you.
Oh, it is beyond a thrill. Thank you for being here with us today.
It's sweet of you. Thank you.
So, Betty, you are a Tony-winning actress with over 50 films and TV credits that include a hit sitcom, collaborations with Brian De Palma, Roman Polanski, Laurents Kasdan, Bruce Beresford, Woody Allen, M. Night Shyamalan. But first, we want to dive into your prolific concert and recording career with like 18 plus albums and counting. You're returning to New York soon for an intimate night at Joe's Pub from April 24th through the 26th. What can you tease about this upcoming show and the set list? What can your fans expect?
Well, I'm really grateful that the Joe's Pub engagement has turned into like a yearly residency.
Yeah.
So I really enjoy it. I'm working with Christian Jacob, my wonderful long-term pianist, collaborator, music director, arranger, and with Tony Marino, my longtime bass player, Keita Ogawa, who plays percussion and drums, and Jordan Peters, my guitarist. And it's just so much fun for me to go back to New York every spring and see people that I haven't seen for a long time. I feel like I'm just throwing my welcome home party in New York City each spring, and I'm very happy that Joe's Pub keeps inviting me back. I have a long history with the public theater there from Joe Papp days, workshops that I did for them, like Edwin Drood, human comedy, all kinds of shows that I workshopped there. And I also have auditioned at the public theater for every major Shakespearean queen. And always never got the role. I took a Shakespeare workshop with several wonderful actresses, including Goldie Hawn and Sally Field and Helen Hunt and Lauren Hutton and Bernadette Peters and me years ago with Kevin Kline's coach. And so we were all trying really hard to get Joe Papp's approval. And it's funny because every spring when I go back to Joe's Pub, Rosemary Tischler, the brilliant casting lady, and she and Gail Papp come to see me in concert there. And so we always reminisce, and it's like, damn, you never let me do any Shakespeare. Anyway, yeah, I don't know, what can you expect to hear? Every year, Christian and I put together a new collection of songs, and we're still in the process of doing that. So I don't have anything to tell you yet.
Well, we're very excited.
That's why I digressed into that other stuff.
Well, we're thrilled. We are going to be there. We're so excited to welcome you back to New York for the spring weather because it's horrible at the moment. And yeah, and also maybe some human comedy on the set list. I would love that. We love the human comedy here.
Thank you. People all the time suggest stuff to me, and I'm embarrassed when I have to say no. I have this wonderful assistant, Kathy Bergenti, who's also my tour manager, who's worked with me for 25 years, and she comes in and tells me what I'm going to sing every year, and I'm like, It's interesting for me to find the material that attracts me in the present moment. I just think by nature, I'm a bit of a rebel. I have been since I was a kid. And so if somebody tells me I have to sing something, I've always rebelled. I've always thought, no. Since I started doing concert work, sometimes at the beginning of that work that I started doing, I guess, right after I did Cats. So that's over 40 years. When certain presenters would be like, oh, she has to all just do Broadway, or, she has to do a Broadway hits. And that would really annoy me because I'm very interested in singer-songwriters, and I'm very interested in story songs and finding the right story songs for the present moment as a kind of elder statesman, if you will. I want to find songs that I can be authentic in the present moment. And people are like, oh, do this song that you did in your 30s or this song you did in your 40s. And I'm like, it just doesn't mean the same thing anymore. So while I can turn it on, quote unquote, as a performer, I really don't enjoy having to. So when it's my concert, I like making my own choices with songs that mean something to me right then and there in the present.
I saw you at BB King's years ago, and it was such a great set list. You were so fantastic.
Thank you.
And I was thinking about this as it's like, you're obviously so associated with memory from Cats, but like when you were performing that on stage, can you talk a little bit about when you were singing that in concert? What's the difference for you as the character, as the actor, singing when you're in that full cat drag, singing memory as the character, or singing it in concert as Betty Lynn? Do you have a completely different storyline as the storyteller?
No, the minute I hear the opening chords, I immediately go back to that time and place, that same environment that same landscape that I resided in as Grisabella. And I think of Grisabella as this very old friend. We've known each other for a long time, and I'm very, very grateful to get to represent her soul in the context of her song. And through the years, I think of her as one of my great teachers, because she's really taught me a lot about life and how to see, because now I'm the age that she was supposed to be when I was 35, So I did the song last year in my Joe's Pub concerts with Memory, it opened with this beautiful guitar entrance, guitar solo that Jordan interpreted beautifully. But I don't know, I sing it on special occasions. I sing it when I'm called to. One of my junior high and high school crushes is turning 80 later this month, and his family has asked me to sing the song for him at his birthday party. So,
oh my God,
I'm going to do that because it's one of his favorite songs. I try to adapt it to the circumstances, I guess. It's really different singing it in a big concert hall or a big theater than it is in a smaller space. I remember when I was in Cats, I was invited to sing Memory at the Easter service at St. Bart's Church, where I also did my first official concert per se in New York City. We did a series of nights to benefit the unhoused persons, but I was invited to sing it on Easter Sunday. And so I was like, how do I sing Memory in the Easter Sunday service at St. Bart's Church? So I started to sing it as I sang it in the theater, and this little baby on like the fourth or fifth row of the pews in the church started screaming and crying. And so I was like, oh, shoot, that's not working while I'm singing. So I quickly adapted it and sang the rest of the song as a lullaby to the baby, and he calmed down. So it's always about the present moment when you're on stage and who's there and your connection with the audience, I would say.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Did you ever feel like you had to make peace with it being a song that was so associated with you? I know other performers like Andrea McArdle has said like Tomorrow was really difficult for her to make peace with.
That's funny. Andrea's a funny girl. I love her. We just ran into each other last spring at this big photo shoot for New York Magazine of Broadway Legends. And it was really great to sit with her and catch up. She's a wonderful person. I really, truly love that song. And I think of it as the jewel of my collection. Apart from my own rebellious nature about not wanting to do things, especially when people insist upon them, I love the song. So I'm not troubled by it. And I've been very, very grateful to even have a signature song. I mean, not everybody gets to have one of those. So I'm very grateful.
Okay, so Betty, something that we're very excited to see and to talk about is the upcoming film, Amanda Kramer's new movie, By Design, which just premiered at Sundance. We can't wait to see it. It feels like right up our alley. The premise is that Juliette Lewis swaps bodies with a chair. And we love that you're doing this kind of like bold, weird film. And it's a cast that includes Melanie Griffith, Robin Tunney, and Samantha Mathis. What can you tease or tell us about this project?
Well, it's gotten great reviews so far. It's out there in art theaters and stuff, and I assume it'll be streaming as well. It's very interesting. I really liked it. I really liked the script, and I loved my scene. I play Juliette Lewis's mother, and I go to visit her. And actually, Amanda Kramer told me that her idea for the film came out of a conversation with her own mother, where her mother said, "I just want to have a conversation where you don't talk."
Direct.
Yeah, I thought that was fun. And so in the scene, I have like this 5-page monologue where Juliette is immobile from this otherworldly experience of switching
being a chair.
Being a chair. And it's left her inanimate, and so her mother comes in and goes through all these shifts of emotion and this confessions and stuff, because Juliette is just lying there on her bed, like comatose. And so the mother interprets that as an opportunity to really open up and share herself, which is pretty funny. I really thought it was funny. And I really enjoyed the shoot and the crew. And Amanda, she's a very innovative, fascinating director.
So, Betty, as we mentioned, and I think most of our listeners know this, but you are a great lady of the American musical theater. The New York Times coined you the voice of Broadway after your debut in 1776, which, for the record, you got on your first day in New York City, so very star to be. You've performed in so many of the great roles. You originated Grisabella in Cats on Broadway, for which you won a Tony. You've played Rose and Gypsy at the Paper Mill Playhouse. You did Norma in Sunset Boulevard in London, and then Broadway, Big Edie in Grey Gardens in Sag Harbor and also Los Angeles. And then most recently, you did Hello Dolly on tour. Are there any great roles in the musical theater you'd still like to play? Like, does Betty Buckley have a Mame in her, a Little Night Music? Like, is there anything that you're still itching to do that you haven't?
Well, I've done Little Night Music twice. I did it with the BBC Orchestra with Maria Friedman and some wonderful people in London. I played Desiree in that. And I also did it at the Casa Mañana Regional Theater years ago when I came back home to Texas to visit. And I did want to do Annie Get Your Gun years ago. And I even pitched this kind of arena version that we recreate the Wild West show with the best horse and riders and, gymnasts and stuff, based on the Cirque du Soleil phenomenon. And I thought that would be very cool. And so I pitched it to a couple of big time producers, but they didn't get it at all, which is unfortunate because that was a role I thought I was born to play. Mame would be fun. I hear there's some issues with the script. That's about it. And I don't know.
Yeah, you've done so much.
Yeah, you've done so much.
Yeah, but thank you. And thanks for being so aware of all the stuff I've done. That's amazing. You guys are like, have I really been doing it for that long? That's amazing.
I mean, Annie Get Your Gun makes total sense because you're a Texas girl. I mean,
and a horse lover. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I ride horses. So I just thought that would be a great part for me to play. There's a couple of things that have eluded me in my career that really bothers me because it's like such a natural for me. For years before I started doing film, I did a lot of television commercials. And in my early 20s, I was called in to create voices for models before the day of supermodels. And I would, go in and they would show me the footage of this beautiful girl on, doing whatever she was doing in the commercial. And then they would tell me, she's I want a voice of a 21-year-old girl who's, and then I would do that. And so I was the voice of a lot of models back in those days. And then I was hired by Brian De Palma. I had auditioned for his film Phantom of the Paradise, and he didn't hire me for the movie, but he hired me to do voices in the movie. So what he would do would be go on location and hire people that weren't really actors, but really looked the part in these minor roles, or small roles. And then he would call me in to create voices for those people. And so I did voices of teenage girls. I did an older woman, and I've done voices for little kids. I did the little boy in Tender Mercies, all of his emotional work, his laughter, his crying, all the stuff.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
I'm the voice of the little boy in Carrie that goes, creepy Carrie, and gets knocked off his bike by Sissy Spacek, and his knee, he hurts his knee. So Brian used to hire me for these voices.
Are you also the voice, do you also do like an uncredited singing in Walking in Space, My Body and Hair, the film?
Yeah.
Why did they not credit you for these things?
They were supposed to. The music director, Tom Pearson, on that movie was subletting my apartment when I was in LA. And so he asked me to do that voice. And I went in one afternoon and sang the voice of the Vietnamese girl singing Walking in Space. I have to say, that's the best vocal I've ever done in my life. It was like the perfect sound mix in my earphones by the engineer. And I just felt like I could sing and sing and sing. And so, it was kind of this verbal agreement that they were supposed to give me a credit, and they didn't originally. And then I think ultimately they did. I can't remember the details of that. But yeah, I did different voices, and I especially love my little boy voices. So I've always, since I was a kid, and I saw the making of Lady and the Tramp, and Peggy Lee sang Peg the Pekingese part and the Siamese cats, the two Siamese cats. We are Siamese.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, that is so cool. I want to do voices in animation. So I haven't done that yet. I remember one time years ago working on this singing animated duck. And I really worked on this voice and I was so proud of it. And I sent the agent, the voiceover agent at that point, sent the wrong tape to the casting people. They sent one of my practice tapes instead of my final version. So I didn't get that. And I'd spent hours on that, like trying to create this little singing duck voice and stuff. So I have yet to be, I did a white owl in Supergirl. I did the voice of the snowy owl, but that's the only thing I've done. And I'm like, how has that eluded me? And so I had this really high powered voiceover agent and I'm like, Charlie, why? My friend Charlie, like, who's this genius, and I'm like, why haven't I been doing that yet? Because I've got these skills, so that, and then the other thing that's eluded me is playing an old Wild West heroine who rides and shoots and has like a bunch of sons that she trains to become bank robbers or something.
Yeah.
Or
you need your Calamity Jane, yeah.
Yeah. I did read the book of Calamity Jane. I did her narration in the book. But those two things I have yet to really accomplish in my life. And I really want to do them both. I want to be a Wild West matriarch person,
I guess you got to do Wyatt Earp, but you didn't get the horse riding in that.
Right. I'm like Wyatt's mother when he's like 15 or something.
Yeah.
But those are the two areas of my career that I'm like, why? I've got these skills. I want to do them. So
we're putting that into the ether.
Yes, for
that's
sure.
Exactly right. Right.
So, Betty, one of the pieces of theater lore that I wanted to discuss with you is the fact that you did Gypsy at Paper Mill. And, the story goes that you invited Arthur Laurents and Stephen Sondheim and then Arthur Laurents in classic fashion. You did not invite them?
I did not invite them. No, they came.
They just showed up?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I came because, we got rave reviews. We were getting like multi-standing ovations with each performance. And they were curious, I guess. They came. Yeah.
What is Arthur Lawrence's problem? According to, I think, Michael Musto, he had said something like, obviously you're a virtuoso, but you can't play Rose. What is that? Like, what? He is notorious.
He was not a very nice man, that's for sure. I was like, it was a really good lesson for me. I came off stage and it was, like a matinee or something. And I knew they were in the audience. And so, of course, I was like, oh, God. And I'm a Sondheim devotee. And I had done the Into the Woods first workshop and the pre-Broadway workshop. And then Lapine and I came to a kind of misunderstanding and I didn't take it to Broadway, which was a big mistake on my part. Years later, when I was opening Sunset in New York, Lapine brought me flowers and stuff and came to see the show. And he took me to out for dinner and he said, I just want you to know that I'm so sorry. He said, if I had known then what I know now, you would have been my witch. And I said, well, if I had known then what I know now, I would have definitely been your witch. And it was funny because I went to see it when it opened with my wonderful voice teacher, Paul Gavert, who I studied with for 19 and a half years. And they kept my look I created with the costume designer, which was wonderful. And they kept my staging with Rapunzel, which we had worked out improvisationally in the workshops. So that's unfortunate. And Sondheim wrote Stay With Me for me. I mean, one of my consternations about being in the workshops was Lapine kept saying, oh, and then the witch will sing another rap tune. And I'm like, the thing I do best is interpret story songs. And here were these like series of the most brilliant story songs, all of which were by the young artists in the show, the Cinderella and Red Riding Hood and Jack, they have these glorious songs and The Baker's Wife and so forth. Beautiful monologue songs by soaring melodies, beautiful storylines. And I was like, and the witch comes on and goes, Rutabaga, on this like weird stuff. And I'm like, oh, Jesus. Finally, one day in the rehearsals, Sondheim calls me into one of the rehearsal rooms privately and said, I wrote this for you. And it was this beautiful soaring melody of Stay With Me. And I just wept. So I don't know. I thought differently about who the witch should be to the storyline. So I did that first workshop. And then I didn't do the second workshop because I was doing song and dance after I'd finished Edwin Drood. And then Lapine called me from the road and said, I'd really like you to do the pre-Broadway workshop. So by then I went into the show, and the company as a team, as an ensemble, had coalesced already around Chip Zien and Joanna Gleason's style of work. And I came in with this really dark interpretation and scary interpretation of the witch. And they had a hard time with it. They were uncomfortable with it instead of creating the space to see how that would affect. Personally, I thought it was a really good way to interpret the thing, but I was uncomfortable. And so I opted at the final negotiation. We all had the same agent, who was this big power broker agent, Sam Cohen, so I just was like, you know what? I just don't feel comfortable, Sam. And so I let it go. And that was stupid. But anyway, that's hindsight. So they came to see me in Gypsy, and I was really excited. And I really, again, was doing a different interpretation than what people, I think, were used to in terms of Mama Rose. And I remember my friends, the critic John Simon and his wife Pat Simon, came backstage, and they started with this whole telling me how I wasn't doing what the expectation was, which I knew I was doing it intentionally. And then they just burst into tears. And so I thought, well, I think what I'm doing is working. And so I was pretty, convinced about it. But yeah, I come out off stage and Sondheim's in the hallway. And I went up to him eagerly. I was really excited to see him. And he goes, he'll tell you, he'll tell you. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I went to my dressing room, and Arthur's in there. And he goes, well, you're a virtuoso. Without a doubt, you're a virtuoso, but you're not right for Mama Rose. And I'm like, oh. Okay, I would love to know what it is you think I should do differently. And he went into this tirade, and I was like, okay, well, I'll, really try to do that. And then I said, can we talk more about, yes, call me. And so I called him, and he said, nobody has anything nice to say about you in this business. And I said, wow. I said, Mr. Laurents, that's really interesting, because I could say the same thing about you, but I wouldn't, of course, because you're, a legend to me. And I've your shows, West Side Story and Gypsy, were the first shows I ever did. When I was 15, I played June in Gypsy, and I played Baby John's girlfriend in West Side Story. I was one of the dancers, and he did not like that. And, at that point, something just kind of broke inside me. I was like, okay, that's the way it is.
Well, if we're not being professional, then I'm going to say my thoughts too.
Okay. Well, anyway, I just thought it was absurd, because what I did was very, very valuable. And Toronto, the producers in Toronto, the Mervishes wanted to move our production, and he wouldn't let it go forward, which was shooting yourself in the foot, because that would have given both Sondheim and Laurents 6 figures each for our run, and then I've heard stories after stories after stories. People started calling me, telling me stories about Arthur Laurents that I had not, I was like, oh, okay. And of course I was heartsick about it. It was a really painful thing. And I went to my therapist, and she's like, Betty, both Laurents and Sondheim, they really had demon mothers. Their mothers were monstrous. And what you did in the show was show this humanity in Rose. And I also made her sexy. So I ultimately made my peace with it because of my brilliant psychologist, Aracelia Pearson Brock. But I'm not the only one. He's done that to a lot. He did that to a lot of people. So I'm not, but it was good for me, because prior to that experience, I was like that same teenage girl about Broadway musical theater and my heroes in Broadway musical theater. And I worshiped those guys. I was like, oh, I would bow down to them and feel so blessed just to be doing their material and being around. And something after that, I thought, you know what? No, I'm an artist of great value too. And so that changed how I felt about everything, because I had been such an ardent devotee, so to speak,
100%. And as you said, we've talked to many people on this show that have had those stories with Arthur Laurents. Yeah. And I mean, that's a really healthy perspective to have. And I'm glad that you had somebody help you guide you through it to get to the other side. So. Yeah.
And Patty LaPone, she's my friend and I love her. She went through it too. She somehow, turned it around for herself with him. But I mean, I knew the value of what I was doing in Gypsy. I saw its impact, and he could have afforded to give us like a 2-month life in Toronto beyond, and it was a good production, really good.
Yeah. Yeah.
You mentioned your psychologist, Betty. I'm interested in your process. Like, it seems like because of your icon status, because of Carrie, it has made you like a go-to muse for like genre and horror directors. You've done AMC's Preacher, Blumhouse's Imaginary, and you worked with M. Night Shyamalan on The Happening and Split, where you play James McAvoy's therapist. So you've said since you've been playing some of these like darker psyche characters, you've worked with a psychologist to develop them. Like, what does that collaboration look like for your actor's process?
Well, my current psychologist is Cecilia Ford. She's brilliant. My wonderful therapist, psychologist, Arcelia Pearson Brock, she passed away. And that was a huge loss for me. It was like right a couple of years after I moved to Texas 25 years ago. And I was still talking to her on the phone, with some regularity. So that was a big loss. And so then I found out about Cecilia Ford, and she became my psychologist. And this was really interesting to me. Cecilia was Aracelia's teacher. So that was like, and I love their names, Cecilia and Aracelia.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of cool. So I've worked with Cecilia on a lot of scripts. I send her the script. I booked a couple of sessions with her just about the script, especially on Split, because I wanted to be a really authentic psychologist and just talk to her about how she would be in the sessions with somebody with that DID or, dissociative personality problem that McAvoy had in the movie. But I've conferred with her about a lot of stuff, Grey Gardens, and Preacher too. I loved Preacher.
I love that.
When I was a young actor and I was studying quite ardently, going to great acting teachers and studying, I had my goal set to become an actress of the quality of Kim Stanley or Geraldine Page. I wanted to be a really truth-telling actress. And then when Jenna Rollins came on the scene when I was a young actor, I became like this. I was so enamored of her work. And so I was like, that's my goal. I want to be that good and that truthful so that when you're on camera or on stage, people have a visceral experience of something really, really true and not, just be a superficial actress, if you could say. And so I like dark psychologies because basically at this as the years have gone by and through my own analysis, which was really intense, I, have the equivalent of a psychology degree. So, I know a lot about human psychology. I've read a lot about it. I've, worked in practical experience with my own analysts. And I'm fascinated by human psychology, and I'm also a meditator. And I teach meditation, and the combination of therapy, analysis, and meditation gives you access to realms of understanding and compassion and empathy about, what it means to be a human being. And to be able to analyze a character's background as to why they do what they do and why they say what they say and why they feel what they feel because of what happened to them before when they were younger. And I think a lot of the issues in our country and our world are because people don't understand themselves and their longings and their needs born of whatever damage was done when they were younger. And we're all in that boat. But in meditation, the first lesson I teach my students, and I'm doing a class right now that it meets for the third session of 6. But, one of the first lessons I teach in my class is most people think they are their minds. And I'm here to tell you that you're not your mind. You have a mind. So the mind is a tool, but most people you see think that they are whatever their mind tells them. And that's not true. And you could really say that's at the core of what's wrong with why we mistreat each other also back. Because whatever occurs to some people they think, oh, that's true. I've got to act like that because that's true. That's my definition system of myself. And you can choose and change that. We can choose to think. We can choose to identify ourselves better than we do. But most people don't have that information. So
yeah, that resonates, honestly, and is a helpful thing for me to hear today. So thank you.
Yeah, you can choose your thoughts, but it's a practice. You have to learn a technique of how to witness the thoughts. And then the things that aren't working for you, that are like attack thoughts or cruel thoughts to yourself and others, judgmental thoughts to yourself and others, you say no to, and then you replace it with the concept of oneness, which includes all of us, and love, this universal love. And over time, that becomes your reflex, as opposed to the programming that you're still going through from your youth. That's it in a nutshell, but it's more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Betty Buckley, we have entered the part of the show that we call the rapid fire. If you can just give us a couple more minutes, we're just going to get all the other credits in. If you want to tell a story, we are here for it, but we want to be respectful of your time.
Yeah, I have to thank you, though, because you know more about my career than I can remember.
Oh.
So I really appreciate that.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you. Okay, so one of your most iconic film roles, of course, is in the 1977 historic film Carrie, co-starring Sissy Spacek, Amy Irving, Edie McClurg, John Travolta, and Piper Laurie, where you play Miss Collins, the gym teacher and the only character who is sympathetic to Carrie. There's been a lot of discourse online and in the film world about the slap that you delivered to Nancy Allen's character when she's being an asshole in gym class. You've said that you felt complicated because Brian De Palma wanted it to be like a real slap and he didn't want it to be like stage combat-y. Why do you think it was important for him for that slap to be like real contact with her?
I don't know. Brian's a complicated guy. That was a weird day. And to this day, I feel really bad about, it was painful to poor Nancy. Every time I see her picture or every time I run into her, I just feel like apologizing. I'm like, Nancy, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I mean, I should have just said no, but I was 20, however old I was, 27 or something like that, trying to do what the director told me. And, I think he had a real crush on her. And later, they got together.
Oh, yes, I forgot. Yeah.
Honestly, I think that was part of the courtship, as weird
Oh
as
my
it
God,
is.
it's kind of morbid. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so the film was obviously turned into an iconic Broadway musical, iconic in that it flopped and then became this huge cult favorite that has a loyal following to this day. You originated the role of Margaret Carey's mom in the musical. We know that you've told the story before on the record, so we don't want to belabor it, but can you give us a little bit of a peek inside of your thoughts, like right before opening night audience and post opening night audience? Like, were you confident going in on what the tone was, how it was going to be received, or did you not know? And what was the aftermath?
Well, I was pretty sure that it was problematic from the beginning, but my friends, Dean Pitchford and our screenwriter, Larry Cohen, who was married to Michael Gore, who was a wonderful composer. The screenwriter, Larry Cohen, also wrote the screenplay. They wanted me to do it. And then I met the director, Terry Hands, to discuss doing the show. He was very provocative when we met, Terry Hands, and he had been the head of the RC, and I had worked for Trevor Nunn, and he had all these challenging questions for me coming out of gossip, and I just was like, this doesn't feel good. And so they made me the offer, and we started to negotiate, and we couldn't work it out. So they cast Barbara Cook, and they went to Stratford to the RC with Barbara Cook, and it got like savage reviews, and she opted not to come back to Broadway with it. Wisely so, I think. And so they wanted the guys, my friends, Michael and Larry and Dean. Like, Dean is one of my dear friends. He was my first Pippin. He was the standby for John Rubinstein on Broadway. So I rehearsed the show with him going into Pippin. And we became really close friends. And I was with him at the Oscars when he won for Fame. And they wanted to fly me to Stratford to see about the show. And finally, they decided not to do that. And they had this German producer who had produced some Broadway tours or some, in Europe and stuff like that. So instead they sent me a video of the production, and I was like, whoa, and I knew that I could bring something to the show different because I'm a more physical performer than Barbara was. And, bless her. I mean, she was a genius singer. And so, but I knew as an actress, I had some knowledge to bring to the interpretation. And so we started negotiating and we couldn't come to terms. And at the last minute, again, this power broker agent, Sam Cohen, made a deal for me to protect me for 6 weeks in case the show closed, which was great. So I decided to go in, and they were all like really wounded from those reviews. And so I said, okay, let me have private rehearsals with Lindsay in a room by ourselves and the music director and the pianist until we work our relationship out, with Terry Hands being present too. But I don't want to do that work in front of a bunch of people. And Lindsay was 17 and this was her first Broadway show. And she's very, very talented, beautiful singer, and was just, had this tremendous potential as an actress. And I'm, an acting coach too. So I really, told her, I said, really work with me here. Just trust me. Whatever I give to you, and it's going to be a lot. Just be authentic in your response, and let's see what we can work out here improvisationally. And she did trust me. And I was very proud of our work. And so was Lindsay. And, we're very confident of that, what we were doing. But our style of work was very honest and very authentic and truthful. And the rest of the show was directed in a really camp way. And one of the classic rumors, which I'm sure you've heard, is that Terry Hands was at a cocktail party and somebody said, "Oh, it's like Grease," meaning the musical. And Terry Hands was like, So he directed it all in kind of Jacobean drama style. And the high school kids were in togas, and the staircase at the back of the high school was an Aztec stairway with a red rail going down. He was a brilliant lighting designer. We were beautifully lit. So there were some great things about it, but it lacked the America. And Debbie Allen was so frustrated with him. He was like, "Let's use a soccer ball instead of a basketball." And she goes, "No, we can't do that." And she was like fighting to her best ability to make it as American because it's a definitively American story with this kind of bully American psychology behind it, obviously. And I'm telling this like authentic story over here with Lindsay of really authentic dynamic between an abusive mother, religious fanatic person, and her vulnerable daughter with like major psychic powers. And it's like the two styles didn't match at all. In fact, one day in rehearsals, I had the temerity to go up to Terry Hands and say, "Listen, I can teach this style of work. Can I take the rehearsals with the ensemble for a day or two?" And he's like, "No." And I'm like, "Okay." So we had our first run through where they bring the mother-daughter sequences into, the run through the show. And none of the kids had seen what we did, and they were deeply moved by it. So I was very confident in what we were doing, but I didn't know how it would land. And our first preview was stunning. Like Lindsay goes out and stops the show with her first song. And I'm backstage going, "Shit, she did it. That's awesome. I better stop the show too." So I go out and my first number stops the show. And then that's incredible. And then it goes from there. And we get, and at the end, I'm at the top. They elevated me up to the top of the Aztec staircase to come down in what was supposed to be my prom dress, which fit a little too tightly. And with this butcher knife behind my back, and I'm singing this lullaby to Carrie. And then I'm directed to, stab her in the back, and then I die on the stairs, and then she's wounded and she stops my heart. So I die. And then she crawls down the rest of the stairway and then sings the last bit, and she dies. And then there's a blackout. And then we were both directed to rise, me on the middle of the stairs and her right down near the audience. And people were having the wildest responses. Like, when I hit the top of the stairs, this guy yells out from the balcony, "Come on down, Betty Buckley." And everybody's like riotous, and like in our songs, they're like crazy, going crazy. And at the end, when she sings the last few days, there's blackout. And I start to get up on the stairs. The entire house goes into this full on booing, like as one voice boo. And Lindsay's down there in the front by herself, right? And I'm further away. So it occurs to me, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a theater riot, which I'd read about in my survey of theater history course at TCU. It's like, oh, wow, this is like when Ibsen's plays happened, or, and there were literally riots in the theater over some of these innovative plays. And so I was like, we're in the middle of a riot, and so in the dark, Lindsay's terrified, and she turns around, she looks back at me, and she goes, what do we do? And I'm like, let's take a bow and get out of here. We got to get out of here. So the lights come up and we take our bow, and it immediately goes from this full house booing to full house standing ovation, like in an instant, not like a bedraggled, just like whoosh, like standing ovation. And it was a schizophrenic response to the show. And it went like that for the rest of the time through the opening. And then, the reviews, we got some good reviews. The chief critic, Frank Rich, he really liked what Lindsay and I did. But at the end of, the word started coming at the party that we gotten these bad reviews. And so I leave the party and I'm, in a limousine, and I'm going uptown to my apartment, and I stop at 72nd Street to get a New York Times to actually read what he wrote. And so I'll never forget sitting in the back of this limousine reading the Times review. And he loved what Lindsay and I did, but he camouflaged the language in such a way that the quote couldn't be lifted. And so I just started laughing because I thought, oh, he is literally trying to kill this show. And it's like, oh, okay. And so it was so interesting. And then the next day, we go for our matinee or something, and everybody's like, oh, we've got this guy from the Saint coming in, and all these people are coming in, and we're going to run it past the reviews. So we I said goodbye on the street behind the Virginia Theater to Dean and Michael Gore and Larry Cohen. They were flying back to LA, and he's like, we're going to run. And I'm like, okay. And so we go to dinner, and we come back, and the closing notice has been posted like that, because the German producer was in so much debt. He'd mortgaged his house. He'd done all this stuff to keep it going. And so instead of risking bringing more money in, which he should have done with the PR, because I thought, oh, this could be like Rocky Horror Picture Show, where people come and they learn the songs and they sing with us and they talk to us like, it was already happening spontaneously. But that was a wild, wild experience. But people would come backstage sobbing and crying and like talk to me about their experiences of their childhood and their abusive parents and stuff, and how it really evoked all this stuff. And a lot of people had all these major feelings about the work that Lindsay and I were doing, which I was really proud of. But it was not like anything that anybody had ever seen on Broadway, which I was fine with. I thought, well, that's cool. We're doing something brand new, So my brother finally came to see it right before we closed. And he said, well, the problem is, Betty Lynn, you and Lindsay are really opening up people's psyches and souls to this deeper truth about parental child abuse and relationships. And then the play is not, in terms of how it's directed, is not taking care of people's feelings through that process. So it creates a lot of upset. And yes. I'm like, okay, so that's what happened.
Well, it's theater history, and we're so grateful that it exists. And there is some footage of it online, which I know probably there shouldn't be, but I'm grateful for theatrical history.
Yeah, me too.
For all of us, it exists. Avia Week is like one of the greatest things I've ever seen. Blurry as it might be, it's gorgeous.
Thank you. Every now and then people send me that, and I'm like, oh, that was hard. And so, yeah, I'm very proud of it. I think it was innovative work, like the likes of which nobody's seen. I developed a lifelong friendship with Lindsay Haitley. I served my friends who wrote it. And, I think in all ways, and it's gone on to have a life since, which is great.
Right.
But I don't think some people were ready for it at all. But I think it could have been different if the style was cohesive.
Totally.
And there were some things that should be cut, without a doubt. But yeah, I really value the experience.
Okay, Betty, you appeared in one of our favorite Tony Awards opening numbers. This is one of the best things of all time. It's you, Rosie, Jennifer Holliday, and Patti LuPone. All of you divas singing your big number. How wild was that? Was it weird? Was it fun?
It was fun. Yeah, super fun.
Okay.
Our friend Seth Rudetsky put that together. And so, yeah,
It's
it was
great.
super fun. And I love my glamorous dress. And that was great.
Okay, Betty, last question. You did a Triscuits commercial in 1977.
Stop.
Sandy Duncan did Wheat Thins. Was there any bad blood between the two of you?
No, I love Sandy Duncan.
Betty Buckley, thank you so much for being here today. This has been such a treat.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Anne. Thank you, Damien. It's really fun. Thank you.
You know, when there's somebody like Betty Buckley whose career spans decades, mediums, iconic performances in multiple mediums, it's like, how do you get it all in? We had to get in the Triscuits and ending that interview on Triscuit talk. And she's like, no, please, Anne and Damien, please.
I felt like we really reined in our kookiness for Betty. So I felt like we had to do it. You know, we had to do it.
But like, let me tell you, we had so much in our back pocket. Oz and Getting On, two of my favorite Betty Buckley performances.
And Eat Is Enough, which I feel like what made her a household name. And I had things to ask about it. But what a great joy to talk to her about, like, getting to do the great roles in the theater, you know, like getting to do, of course, Cats, but then also like I was interested in her like regionally, or like doing the provinces and doing like Hello Dolly and doing Gypsy and that crazy Arthur Laurents Sondheim story.
Insane. And I think I didn't ever attach her to Annie Get Your Gun, but I think that could have been so great. And honestly, I'm interested in the fact that never came to pass, because I do think it's like, remember when circus things were really big on Broadway? There was like that Bob Dylan musical that was
Banana Spiel,
the ill-fated Banana Spiel, and then the Pippin, of course.
It is interesting because it also feels like it could have been like immersive, like it could have been like a regional production. Like I'm surprised that somebody wasn't like, let's do this. Isn't
we can like do it at the fairgrounds.
She's from Texas, right? Like I would have thought that someone would have been like, cool, like this could be in like a rodeo round. You know what I mean? And like that would have been cool.
I know. I'm thinking about it. Like her voice could carry through that fairground. I would be so into it.
Get Your Gun have like a problematic book? Because it's interesting to me that it hasn't been revived. I feel like there's like indigenous people that are not called indigenous people. That's my like memory, but I don't know the show super well.
I know the Bernadette Peters revival and the Ethel Merman original production, but yeah, there's like multiple versions of the book. I think they've tried revising it and editing it. Didn't you and I see the one with Megan Hilty at City Center? That was like a amalgamation of like 4 different books.
Oh, you're right.
It was a concert version, but it's like they're trying. I don't think they'll ever be able to amend it properly, but the score is so good. The score is so good in those songs.
I would love to hear Betty sing that alongside the human comedy. Betty, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna ask. Can't have a mention of the human comedy and not like you. This is like me and Anne's mental illness is that like there's always like the actor will say something in the interview of like, well, when I was filming Tender Mercies, and it's always us being like, amazing segue for us to tell you we know everything about that. We don't, but it's like, here, let us say our setup with the director's name and the year and all the awards it was nominated for and who other women that were in the thing. And it's like, they're always like, okay,
what's the question? It's fair. The question is, some of it's for the audience, some of it's for us. All of it's in good fun. And I feel like, by the way, Tender Mercies, we did watch for Betty, and it's an incredible performance. I actually watched it one night, and the next morning, Robert Duvall had passed, and it was so shocking. It's a beautiful performance by Betty where she gets to sing an Oscar-nominated song. She's very good. But I was really excited that we got to go deep on Carrie, because you have taught me about the love of a flop Broadway musical, and the stories from that show are just so legendary. And if you have not, as a listener, gone and watched the footage, because Betty did co-sign it, I feel like it's okay to send people to the bootlegs. You know, I feel complicated about it sometimes, but it's important. Right? Yeah, it's not filmed for the library. There's incredible footage, both of Barbara Cook doing it in London, and then when you see what Betty did with it in New York. And Eve Was Weak is one of the great theatrical performances with Lindsay Haitley. It's a brilliant performance, and hearing her talk about the fact that the audience reaction was a theatrical riot. I mean, that is theater history. That's so cool.
Do you know that Annie Golden was Carrie in the workshops?
Holy shit.
That's cool, right?
That's so Cool. Now I'm trying to remember, was it in London?
I don't remember. I don't think she ever did it on stage. I think it was just she helped workshop it, but
she was a rock star and they were like, great, we don't really know what the tone is.
And she has sort of like I feel like she has like a youthful thing that was part of her, like in her bag when she was like a more of an ingenue, is like being kind of like a rock star, but had like a young voice.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just think that like all of the lore around Carrie is interesting to me. And so what a thrill to get to talk to Betty about it. And yeah, she was like down for it. And I feel like I do feel complicated about the bootlegs of it all. I feel like we were coming of an age. We were like right out of college. I feel like when YouTube was like becoming a thing, and it is the way I've seen so much. I am fortunate and privileged enough to see a lot of theater, to live in New York, and it's accessible mostly. But, you know, like when it's something that like was not in our lifetime,
right,
in our timeline, and it wasn't filmed for the library and it wasn't filmed for PBS, I do feel complicated because I'm like, well, also like this is how people learn.
Right.
And it is bringing theater to, as you say, the provinces. Like, this is how I used to listen to MIDI files of songs on like musicaltheater.com or whatever the weird site was. And now it's like kids can go to YouTube and see Betty Buckley sing the original in like a weird, like, you know, dark theater, bad audio.
B-roll footage. Yeah. Right. Meaning this is our history. And I'm grateful that people like Aurora Spider-Woman are preserving it for us. I really want to get Aurora on the Patreon, and we could do that, like black out their face and give them a vocal reverb if they are not comfortable being seen on camera. One of
the great archivists of musical theater on YouTube, and I'm not joking.
Folks, if you like this episode, you're like us. We love Betty Buckley. So thank you for joining us here on You Might Know Her From. The best way you can support us is to give us a 5-star review or go find us on the Patreon, patreon.com/You Might Know Her From. That's where we have recaps, reviews, special interviews that sometimes feature non-actresses, little tidbits, us shooting the shit, all of the things. And if you're a patron, you can also ask us what you want to hear from us. So that's the best way to keep us doing what we're doing on the main feed. You can also follow us on TikTok and Instagram at You Might Know Her From. Damien is really going hard with the TikTok reels and really doing incredible work. So please go support him and us over there.
Folks, all that music you hearing underscoring each and every episode of You Might Know Her From is by Gang. Gang is from Philly. Gang is 3/4 women. We love Gang. You can listen to Gang wherever you stream your music. And also thank you to our editor, Adam Brown, for this silky smooth editing. Adam is a total delight, and we're so happy for him to be part of You Might Know Her From.
And if you need to find that clip of And Eve Was Weak by Betty Buckley and Lindsay Haley, it's going to be right there in the show notes. I archive each and everything we discuss at the bottom of the episode description because I have a control disorder.
I don't think of you as having a control issue, which is interesting. Like, I feel like you're so laid back. I feel like you don't really like making decisions. So
100%.
I feel like you often will like not be committal because you don't want to have to deal with the logistics. And then like, it's usually the night before you're like, I'm going to come, but I'm also going to be at Rockaway Beach that day. And then Hannah and I are going to stop and get a car from her sister, and we're going to drive back, and then we're going to stop at the Chili's and go there, and then we'll be there. And I'm always like, wow, you didn't answer for 6 weeks, and now you guys are coming to the concert, but also doing 7 other things. God, I love you. But I would never be like, Anne's so controlling. I'd be like, Anne is avoidant of having to make a decision, and Anne, you are organized in a way that is different than I am organized, and I appreciate that. But I wouldn't say controlling, so I wanted you to elaborate on this tag.
This is interesting. I'm diving deep into my psyche here. I think the Betty Buckley psychology talk has opened something up. But yeah, I think it's this two-handed approach where I have a deep fear of not commitment, but conflict, probably, with potential, like if a commitment results in a conflict, that stresses me out. But I have ways of doing things that I like to do, but I won't ever tell somebody that they're doing it the wrong way because I know that comes off badly. So I think it creates this internal conflict for me where I try to come off as very relaxed. And Hannah always has told me, and this is when you know somebody really knows you, where she was like, everybody thinks you're so easygoing and so relaxed and so not anxious, but guess what? I know the truth. And I was like, I guess she does see, she sees the parts of me that
the machinations.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to be seen as somebody who likes control, but obviously I do. And I think the show notes speak to that.
Well, I'm going to say, please tell me if I should be doing something differently. You know, I don't like the way you wind up the chords. And I've made that very clear.
I actually was thinking about that because I saw somebody push to me on TikTok of like, if you see somebody rolling up chords like this, and it was like the old arm around the elbow to the hand. Boy. And I said, oh no, the Damien probably liked this. And now it's been pushed to me on TikTok because I know he's, so why don't you give me a tutorial? I do like to learn. I tell Hannah, and I'm telling you now on the record, I want to know if there's something I can do better that is achievable. I'd like to know how to do it because in my old age, I think it's important to keep learning. Never stop being a student. I'm going to learn how to fold. I'm going to learn how to roll chords properly this afternoon.